I'm Cleo, and we're at the Cochrane Ecological Institute. It's a registered charity and it's devoted to rescuing, rehabilitating and releasing injured and orphaned wild animals and for public education. Well, at the moment we're in owl aviary. There's two birds in here. One of them is an old bird that we did spend a fortune on trying to get the wing perfect, but it isn't good enough for hunting, so we kept her as an educational bird. Because she's a resident bird, we can put baby owls in with her. The little baby is called Mulligan, and he came from a golf course. He was just walking across it, and a couple of people found him and brought him out to us. It was an orphan. What we have to do is to make certain that he can hunt and kill for himself. That's the most important thing, and this is big enough for him to learn to fly in. I think every time the adult has to be a foster parent, it is an affront, and it doesn't like it. But the little birds, the owlets, recognize it as another owl. Otherwise, if we raise them, particularly single birds, on their own, they begin to think they're people. But this one certainly doesn't believe it's a person. This one's well aware it's an owl, and a pretty grumpy owl too, because the other one's grumpy every time it sees us. Well, we called him Jim Burns because Jim Burns brought him, and he found him beside his barn, and he's broken his wrist, and so there's no way that we can reset it. There's nothing he can do. And so he will be an educational bird. But when he came in, so funny. He came in and he was so weak. He couldn't stand up, he couldn't do anything. I had to roll towels and prop him on his belly and then put another towel under his chin to keep his head upright. And then I had to hand feed him. I said, you know, he'll never forgive me. When I move him, he'll never forgive me. And he hasn't. I had to go in and pick him up. And from that day on, he's treated me as I was an assassin. And he's convinced, even though I'm the only person who feeds him, that I am going to come in, catch him again, roll him in a blanket, and take him somewhere else. Funding wildlife rehabilitation is very hard. So we are unique. We run a dog and cat boarding kennel, and so everyone who brings their dog or their cat to us to board will know that their boarding fees go towards supporting wildlife like the little owl and Jim Burns.
I'm Nicola Murphy. I am the site manager for the Calgary Wildlife Rehabilitation Society. We are a veterinary-based wildlife hospital. We take in injured and orphaned wildlife and do our best to get those animals that have come in injured out as best we can and get them released. So this is Oberon. He's a great horned owl. Oberon was brought to us several years ago. He was hit by a truck and unfortunately lost part of his wing when he was hit. But he was young and such a well-natured bird that we decided to use him in our education program. Red is a red-tailed hawk. We used her for fostering. She had an injury to her wing and she has a partial amputation. Any of the baby Swainson hawks, red-tailed hawks, she fosters them. She does an amazing job. She's beautiful. She's absolutely beautiful. So he is a juvenile bald eagle. They start to develop their coloration, the white head and the tail feathers when they're about 4 or 5 years of age. So he is just starting to molt into that. His beak is getting yellow, his eyes are getting yellow. He's starting to develop that coloration. He came in with a severe injury. He was found at McKinnon Flats, therefore his name is McKinnon. And he's probably upset because it's raining. Even though this is his natural habitat, he prefers to be inside. A few years ago, Beaky came in with a fractured jaw and a beak malformation. And so we've been working with her for a couple of years to repair her beak. Aurora came in 2007. She had a ruptured patagium, and that's the tendon that runs from the shoulder to the wrist. And unfortunately, even though her bones were not fractured, the damage to that tendon is very critical. It allows them to bank and turn properly. So she can get some flight, but she cannot get complete flight. And when you're dealing with their home range, which is in the tundra, she would not be able to hunt properly and she wouldn't be able to survive. So they've been with us for a few years now. Aurora definitely has. And unfortunately, the criteria for release is not there. But we've had amazing opportunity to transfer them to the Assiniboine Zoo so that they have a larger enclosure and that we know that their care is going to continue and that they're going to be okay. So the Calgary Wildlife Rehabilitation Society is a registered charity. We are a registered nonprofit. We do not receive public funding or direct city funding or anything like that. We rely on the donations from the public.
I'm Cleo, and we're at the Cochrane Ecological Institute. It's a registered charity and it's devoted to rescuing, rehabilitating and releasing injured and orphaned wild animals and for public education. Well, their mother denned in a hay storage barn, and then she was killed on the road, and one of them, the bigger one, saved the other one's lives, really, because he must have gone out looking for her, and he shouted for about 5 hours. Shouted and shouted and shouted, and so the people who live nearby heard him. You know, they got home from work and they heard him shouting and they heard him shouting and they shouting. So then they phoned us and we went over and I caught him. And then I was carrying him back and we looked and you'd see 2 more in the hay, but we didn't have anything, you know, to catch. So we set a trap for them that night and we caught them. And the neighbors brought them over in the trap, and then the following day they found the little one. There's a very timid little one that was just lying on the ground, so they picked him up, took him over, and we reunited them. And what we'll do is we'll just keep them and release them, that they'll go in due course. They normally separate from their parents when they're 5-6 months old, and so that's what these ones will do. Thank goodness they've stopped drinking Espilac, the milk replacer, because that's really expensive. There are some animals that the government has decided should not be rehabilitated, and there isn't, to my mind, a really good justification for making the decision not to rehabilitate some species. They have no record of wildlife rehabilitation creating human-wildlife conflict situations. So why not let bears be rescued? Bears should be rescued because every single animal saved adds to Canada's biodiversity.
Hi, my name is Jenna McFarland. I'm a senior wildlife technician here at Calgary Wildlife Rehabilitation Society. This is where I spend all of my time, which is quite excellent. We get a lot of ducklings in the springtime and in the summer. And normally the scenario is that the mother duck is crossing her babies across the road and the mom will get hit by a car and people will find these little babies running around all over the place and bring them to us. Also, we get singles in when some of the ducklings are a little bit smaller than the others and don't have the ability to hop up over a curb or get through a bush the way the others do, and they just unfortunately get left behind. This is a group of several different little clumps of orphaned ducklings. One of them is a group whose mother passed away on a roadway, and then there's a couple solos that we got in that people just sort of found wandering around the neighborhood. And we keep some permanent residents as foster parents. So these 2 ducks, we've got a female and a male mallard. The male only has 1 eye. The female has a wing injury that was not fixable, so she is a non-releasable animal. So they live happily here through the winter time, and when springtime comes, they take up their role as foster parents here, which works really well. It keeps the ducks from imprinting on us. It teaches them all the skills that they need as babies. Really works a lot better than us trying to hand raise them. And these guys, we see the same scenarios as you will with the ducks. Some of them get left behind on their walk to the water. Some of them couldn't keep up with the mom and dad on the trek, or couldn't get off the rooftop where they were originally nesting. So people find them and say, oh no, they're all left behind. You can't just go plunk them down into the river because they don't have anyone to kind of look up to. A lot of times, if we find a goose family on the river that has goslings of about the same age, they will accept babies that aren't their own into the group, but it has to be monitored pretty tightly. This is a baby jackrabbit, and we get a lot of these. And the problem that we have with these little guys is that the moms leave them scattered around in bushes, under trees, and it's a survival strategy for them. They leave their babies apart, so if one of them is found, the other ones aren't eaten. So people find them under bushes, they say, oh, baby all by itself, oh, it was lonely, it was scared, and I mean, I'm sure it was a little scared, but it's waiting for mom to come back. Dawn and dusk, she feeds them twice a day, and then she leaves them by themselves. And because she's very heavily scented as a prey animal, she will be the target for any coyotes, foxes, anything else that might want to eat her. So she leaves the babies behind to protect them. And if they sit still, you would never notice it's there. So for these guys, if people call us and say, look, I found this baby bunny, I don't know what to do, normally we say, leave it where it is, or move it within 150 meters of where you found it to somewhere safe.
Hi, I'm Cleo Smeaton, and I'm president of the Cochrane Ecological Institute. We take in injured and orphaned wildlife, and we accept wildlife 24 hours a day, 24/7. And the other day, a gentleman brought me a bird. He'd seen it on the side of the road, and he picked it up, and it was rolled up in his coat. And I truly thought it didn't have any chance of survival. But I treated it for stress and shock, and it was incredibly thin, and it couldn't stand up, and it didn't open its eyes. And in the morning I thought, well, it's probably dead. And I opened the door, and it was looking at me. It's got those big, pale eyes, it's quite astonishing. And from then on, it's been picking up, as you can see. It's very greedy. And we will release it. It's a young bird. This is the hardest time in their lives, right through the first winter. And many of them die. The fawn, that's a real problem. I really am at a loss with that little animal. As you can see from the guy next to it, also a rescued deer. That's what it should be looking like. And late in the summer, the Edmonton Wildlife Rehabilitation Society telephoned us and said that their vet had treated this fawn, and they'd done everything they could, and could they send it to us. We keep the fawns over their first winter, and then we release them. But that one, because even though it's been treated, its jaw isn't right, I have to feed it extra food and pablum in order to keep some weight on it. I mean, it didn't have much weight on it when it came down, and it just looks not good. But I thought if I can keep it over the winter until the grass comes green, see how it does, if it puts on weight and looks okay, we can release it when we release the others. So that's what we're doing. We're waiting to see how it goes. The young Swainson's hawk was found not far from the nest, but the wing had broken in the spring and summer. They hold on to the branches of the tree where they're nesting, and they flap their wings, and that's the way they develop their muscles. But if you get a gale then and picks it up and blows them somewhere, they're not strong enough to hold on, and they let go and they get tossed around. And I think that's what happened to this one. And that little Swainson's wing is unusable. And so we will train it to visit schools. It'll be an educational bird.
I'm Nicola Murphy. I am the site manager for the Calgary Wildlife Rehabilitation Society. So GH is about 24, 25 years of age, and he actually used to do the education programs, but now he's retired from the education program, and he does fostering for us. Within minutes of receiving a great horned owlet, we place it in with GH, and he's got him covered and he's got him protected and he's watching him. He is an excellent foster parent. He's amazing. They, of course, are mostly nocturnal, so they will hunt for mice in the evening. And he did happen to fly into an office building window, unfortunately. And he does have what's called a coracoid fracture for a bird that size. Very difficult to surgically fix. So we are monitoring his progress. Did some rehabilitative therapy and bandaging and see how he does. His prognosis right now, just due to his injury, is still unknown. We have to wait and see. Even with our best intentions and our best medications and therapies, we still don't know if he is going to be able to be released and what his chances are. Get up on your perch. Go, go, go. No, get up on your perch. Get up on your perch. They partially imprinted him, but he's at the point where he can't be released, but we don't want to use him in the education program because he's still quite wild. So he looks a little funny because we had to pull some of his primaries to get them to grow fully. So he's got his mouse and he's protecting that, which is good. That's what he's supposed to do. And he is an American kestrel. If you come across injured wildlife, or you think that they're injured or that they may be orphaned, the best thing to do is call the center. It's very important because in most cases, wildlife's natural behavior, people may think that they are injured or orphaned when in fact they're not. And we can educate the public and we can explain to them that they not necessarily do they need to be brought into the hospital or do they need to be rescued. But just learning about them is enough information to allow them to exist in their natural habitat and do what they need to do.
Hi, I'm Cleo Smeaton and I'm president of the Cochrane Ecological Institute. Okay, Mr. Burns is a non-releasable bird. And what happened with him is he broke the outermost bones on his wing, which is enough that he can't fly, but he can jump around and make a good landing. So the farmer who found him starving by his barn brought him here, and his name was Jim Burns, so we called the bird Jim Burns. I didn't think he would live, and he has. And as you can see, he's full of beans. Eagles love fish, especially bald eagles. They eat a lot of fish. But you can't feed frozen fish without adding thiamine to the fish. So you have to feed frozen fish and a vitamin addition. The fish is donated. Well, the great horned owl is a very, very handsome bird and a veterinary failure, because not because of the vets, but just because all the work they did on it to make it fly again didn't act. It made it possible for it to fly, but not well enough to hunt. And this year we got a baby great horned owl, so we put it in with the grown-up great horned owl, because it's much better if owls learn that they're owls and don't think they're people. And the adult owl was horrified. I mean, appalled that we had imposed this begging creature on it. But however, they've now become friends, and the young one flies. But you'll see that I'll put some grain down in a line in the flight pen, so that foolish mice can come and eat it, and hopefully the owl will get some practice. And then once we know it's killing for sure, we can let it go. There's no point raising them and letting them go to have them starve.
We are here at the Calgary Wildlife Rehabilitation Society, and we're a not-for-profit wildlife rehabilitation hospital. So I'm Jenna McFarland. I'm Senior Wildlife Technician here at Calgary Wildlife, also a zoologist. a marine biologist, and a veterinary nursing student. The only animals that we still have here who are considered to be part of the flood intake are our 2 beavers that we have. So we have 2 Canadian beavers, both about the same age. They came in on the same day. Their names are Birch and Aspen, so that's what we've named them for now. Now, the interesting thing about beavers is that they don't actually leave their lodges and become independent until about 2 years of age. So for us, we're looking at about a 1 to 2 year commitment with these guys, which is a lot. It's a lot of work for us. We're always emptying pools, refilling pools because they're semi-aquatic. It's a big job. We also have to provide them with a lot of food and a lot of trees. So they're growing really fast. They've got perfect health at this point in time, so prospect is very good. We really want to make sure that we grow them up unhabituated by people, which is actually really easy for beavers because they're not very friendly, they're quite aggressive. And hopefully we will find a good location to release them where they won't be interfered with by humans and where they won't cause any destructive damage to ranch lands and farmlands. Yeah, so Nick's just going to bring us some little pieces of mouse. Okay, so the other day we were lucky enough to get in a northern pygmy owl, which is the smallest North American species of owl. They're very tiny little owls, very tiny little guys. They actually attack very large prey. Very impressive. So this little guy was actually found out in Red Deer Lake, just south of the city near Pritis. Lady noticed that he was kind of hanging around her deck and her bird feeder, and then was started to get attacked by crows. Magpies were kind of coming in. So he clearly was too cold to be able to sustain any flight, so she brought him inside and gave us a call. So he's actually doing really well. He's all warmed up, he's all fed up, and he'll be ready to go in a couple of days. We also have a female broadwing hawk patient. She came in a couple weeks ago. She was emaciated, really bad body condition, but very good bone structure, no problems with that. So she's slowly worked her way back to health. The only problem that we have is that they're a migratory species, so really she should be down south by now. So we have a couple of options. We find a way to get her down south, which we're talking about options for that, whether we want to fly her or we can transfer her to another facility, or we keep her here for the rest of the winter and release her in about May. We have a new potential education animal. He is a juvenile red-tailed hawk, and he's a light morph. And he had a triple fracture in one of his wings. So the bone was so shattered that it's not really something we can surgically put back together. But while he was healing, and while we were getting to know him here and giving him the treatment that we could, we realized he was surprisingly docile for a red-tail. They are notoriously not friendly and really high stress in captivity, and he wasn't showing any of those signs. So he's been in here for a couple of months, and we've been doing some training with him. He's being hand fed, and he's been very responsive. He seems to like the attention. He's currently living with one of our other education hawks, Leto, who's a Swainson's hawk. They're getting along really well. We're really hopeful that he's going to be a great part of our education program. We don't try and keep animals here as we're not a sanctuary, we are a rehabilitation center, but sometimes we come across rare animals that are injured and can't be released into the wild that have that particular combination of traits that makes them appropriate for education and long-term captivity. We have a chickadee who is a volunteer and staff favorite. What had actually happened is her cat had caught him in the yard at the bird feeder and pulled out a bunch of his tail feathers. She brought him here, which was a good move, and we had a look at those follicles, seeing if they're regenerating, which they are. So we're just going to keep him here until those grow back. Chickadees overwinter in climates such as ours, so he's not a problem for release. We just want to make sure that he's healthy enough to get away from other cats once we release him. But he's a great eater and has a beautiful song. He is a pleasure. Well, we're here today at Calgary Wildlife. We're the Calgary Wildlife Rehabilitation Society. My name is Jenna, and I'm a wildlife technician here. Today we're going to be releasing a great gray owl. It's one of our patients who's been here for several weeks now. Great gray owls are really common in the Calgary area. Most people don't see them because they sit very still, but they do have a very large wingspan. We do often see them in the Cochrane and the Bragg Creek area. They're quite voracious hunters. They are actually not one of our bigger owls, but they are very long because they have quite a long tail and quite a big wingspan. They have very small eyes, very small beaks, which is quite different from most of the owls that we see here, especially great horned owls and snowy owls. They're really quite a unique species. They tend to be a little dopey, a little docile, but we've actually found that this particular individual is really quite feisty, so that's always nice for us to see. He came to us because someone had suspected that he had been hit by a car. So he was found on the side of the road. We brought him in here, we did some veterinary exams on him and found that he had some ulceration in one of his eyes. So we gave him some medication, we watched that eye until it had healed up completely, and now he's ready to go and be released. Prognosis for this guy is actually really great. His eyes have healed up perfectly. His body condition is really good. His feather structure is really good. His flight has been fantastic here in our flight pen. So we're really excited about his future success. One of the great things about this Great Gray release is that he's part of our new banding program. We've gotten federally approved bands and we're putting them on all of our birds to be released. So if anyone finds him ailing, then they can trace it back to us and we can get a full update on his success, which is really great for us. It's really something we've been looking forward to for a while. So we're going to take him out. He's flying really well. He's eating really well. Hopefully he will take to the skies. We have pretty much no doubt that it will be successful. So that's our plan for today.
Excited? Have a look around. Here we go. You ready?